Texas Governor Greg Abbott might as well be campaigning in New Mexico because some of his biggest fans reside in that state. And that's because of the fact that he made the terrible decision to do extra security checks of commercial vehicles traveling across Texas's southern border.
For 3 days, truckers carrying fresh produce and other cargo have been protesting, stuck at a standstill at the Far Reynosa International Bridge near McAllen, Texas. Some now waiting as long as 12 hours to enter the country.
They're idling at $5 a gallon. Well, it's really hurting us a lot.
The protests coming after a new order by Texas Governor Greg Abbott, who is now requiring state troopers to inspect trucks coming into Texas, a second checkpoint, following the usual inspection by U.S. Custom and Border officials.
Cartels use vehicles, many of them dangerous commercial trucks, to smuggle immigrants, deadly fentanyl, and other illegal cargo into Texas.
But critics argue the impact goes far beyond these safety measures. Today, the White House adding pressure. Press Secretary Jen Psaki condemning Abbott's orders in a statement calling them redundant, that the disruptions to trade are impacting jobs and raising prices for families in Texas and across the country. Business owners in Texas now warning shoppers should expect food shortages in the next few days.
So Mexican Economy Minister Tatiana Clouthier said a planned rail and ports expansion known as the TMEC corridor to connect the Pacific port of Mazatlan and the Canadian city of Winnipeg would not use Texas, but instead the rail line would be routed along the far edge of West Texas up through Santa Teresa, New Mexico, about 20 miles west of downtown El Paso. And listen, the minister for the economy in Mexico explains exactly why they're making this decision. We are now not going to use Texas. We can't leave all the eggs in one basket and be hostages to someone who wants to use trade as a political tool.
Texas Governor Greg Abbott's political games are not panning out the way he hoped they would, and it's the people of Texas who are paying the price. I'm Yasmin Khan with Rebel HQ, and last month, Greg Abbott decided to take the migrant situation at the border into his own hands again. And this time, it's costing the state of Texas a rail line worth billions of dollars. Okay, so just a quick recap. He's already activated the Texas National Guard to act as border patrol agents, which has led them to complaining about poor working conditions, suffering from depression from a lack of purpose and from being away from their families for seemingly no reason, and losing their jobs at home. These agents, by the way, will not receive full health and death benefits for their service because they were activated by Abbott rather than by the federal government. And more recently, they've been discouraged from saving migrants from drowning in the river, which is just inhumane. Then he tried to get one over on Joe Biden by busing migrants over to DC and dropping them off at Union Station, making them Joe Biden's problem instead of his. The migrants responded by publicly thanking Abbott for the free bus ride, which is hilarious. But then maybe his worst offense yet, last month in April, he held up commercial trucks at the Texas-Mexico border that routinely carry goods such as produce to the US through Texas. The truck drivers were delayed hours, sometimes days, as state agents searched them thoroughly, looking for contraband and illegal immigrants. Now this is important. The searches yielded 0 results. But according to estimates, they cost the US $9 billion in GDP, they cost Texas $4.2 billion in GDP, and they caused $240 million worth of produce to spoil. Now, just as a side note, this is all happening as Republicans are actively blaming the Democrats for food shortages, and they're believing conspiracy theories about food plants being mysteriously set on fire. The trucking situation was remedied when Mexican leaders at the border agreed to increase security measures of trucks crossing the border into Texas, a move that would cost them millions of dollars, even though Abbott's searches, again, yielded 0 results. I feel like I can't stress that enough. They basically agreed to solve a problem that was never a problem to appease an unhinged man so that he would stop holding people and their food hostage. In other words, this has all become an incredible waste of money. Now, of course, Abbott considers this a political win and threatened to stop the trucks again if he decided to make up another fake problem down the line. I say fake problem because his searches yielded 0 results. But his win was short-lived when the Mexican president simply decided to no longer deal with him. Mexico had been in talks with the US and Canada for years, developing a rail line, the TMEC corridor, that was meant to travel from the Mexican port city, Mazatlan, to Winnipeg, Canada, through Texas. However, since Texas and its government are no longer considered to be reliable, the rail line will now go through New Mexico instead. New Mexico is thrilled. The Mexican economy minister said in a statement, "We're now not going to use Texas. We can't leave all of the eggs in one basket and be hostages to someone who wants to use trade as a political tool." So in 10 days, Abbott undid years worth of negotiations. And for what? The move isn't quite set in stone yet, but Mexican officials seem pretty well over Abbott. Meanwhile, gubernatorial candidate Beto O'Rourke is dragging Abbott on Twitter over this fiasco. He released a video following the announcement from the Mexican officials that ended with the text, "We need a governor who will prioritize Texas's economy over costly stunts." Beto, a notorious long shot, has disappointed Texans twice already, and I don't say that to disparage him. For all of Beto's faults and for the reputation that he's incurred, I do appreciate that he keeps trying because honestly, nobody else is. Texas leadership is incredibly red and incredibly hard to penetrate. Before Beto entered the race, there weren't really any decent Democratic challengers who were willing to take on Abbott. The best hope that we had was Matthew McConaughey. He's an actor who hangs out with Russell Brand and never said which party he would even be running for if he were to run. Beto entering the race was a good thing, and people seem to forget how close he came to taking Ted Cruz out of the Senate. He came way closer than anyone expected him to, and to me, his successes were indicative of the fact that Texans are more open to change than the rest of the country gives us credit for. Will Abbott's recent failures be enough to turn Republican voters against him? Will his pandering to the Trump base ultimately backfire in his bid for a third gubernatorial term? Maybe. Anyway, Beto's got COVID now, so